Welcome back. We are now on to day 5 of unit 3. So today we're going to be talking about photosynthesis, and specifically, how does the process of photosynthesis function to support life? So there are a few things you should annotate in this aim. And the first thing is, ooh, that was ugly. The first thing is the word photosynthesis. So if we are to break this word down, the word photo means light, and the word synthesis means to create. So the word photosynthesis is really talking about using sunlight to create something. And I hope you know what that something is by the end of today's lesson. So the first do not question you need to answer is, what are the products of cellular respiration and what are the reactants? The second thing is, where does cellular respiration occur? So go ahead and pause this video, answer those 2 questions, and then press play when you're ready to go over it. So you should remember that the formula for cellular respiration is glucose, C6H12O6, plus oxygen, oh no, go back, is going to yield water, CO2, oh my word, this thing keeps moving, and ATP. So the things at the beginning of this reaction, what goes into this reaction, are going to be your reactants. So these 2 molecules are what react in order to form our products, which are going to be found on this side of the equation. So the products are going to be water, carbon dioxide, and ATP. The reactants are glucose and oxygen. So again, your reactants is what goes into that equation. Your products are what comes out. Second question, where does cellular respiration occur? My PowerPoint says to draw that basic structure. That is not on yours. So you just need to tell me that this cellular respiration occurs in the mitochondria. But if you want right, so to start off, I'm going to read. I'm going to read through this passage with you. And as we go through these questions, I want you to answer them on your paper. So part A, photosynthesis. Photosynthesis is essential for all life on Earth because it provides food and oxygen. Plants are considered autotrophs because unlike humans, they can make their own food using this process. Photosynthesis is a process in which sunlight energy is used to make glucose. The site of photosynthesis is in the chloroplast, an organelle found in the leaves of green plants. The main functions of chloroplasts are to produce food or glucose during photosynthesis and to store food energy. Chloroplasts contain the pigment chlorophyll. Chlorophyll absorbs most of the colors in the color spectrum and reflects only green and yellow wavelengths of light. This is why we see leaves as green or yellow, because these colors are reflected in our eyes. So you've got a few questions that you need to answer based on that passage. The first one is, what is photosynthesis? So from that passage, you should have found something like this. Photosynthesis is the process by which sunlight energy is used to make glucose. So plants take in that sunlight and they use it to create glucose or food. Where does photosynthesis occur? This happens in the chloroplast, which is an organelle found in plant cells. Again, we do not have chloroplasts. These are not found in animal cells, only plants. What are chloroplasts and where are they found? So chloroplasts are organelles found in the leaves of green plants. They're found in the leaves because those leaves are able to absorb the sunlight and then use it to produce glucose. So what are the 2 main functions of chloroplasts? There were 2 things mentioned in this passage. First, they're able to produce glucose or food. And secondly, they're able to then store that food energy to be used. Number 5, why do most leaves appear green? This has to do with chlorophyll, which is a pigment found in chloroplasts that reflects the color green. So remember, we've talked about this before, that pigments are actually proteins. So these are protein molecules, and that pigment absorbs every color except for green and yellow. So when it reflects the colors green and yellow, that is why we see plants as green. And finally, number 6, what is the primary pigment found in the chloroplast? Well, it is chlorophyll. So make sure you guys have these answers on your notes. And then let's move on to part 2. All right, another passage. So glucose is another name for sugar. The molecular formula for glucose is C6H12O6. Plants make sugar by using the energy from sunlight to transform CO2 from the air with water from the ground into glucose. This process, called photosynthesis, occurs in the chloroplast of the plant cell. During this process, oxygen is created as a waste product and is released into the air for us to breathe. The formula for photosynthesis is below. So CO2 plus H2O plus sunlight yields glucose plus oxygen. This formula says that carbon dioxide and water molecules are combined with the energy from sunlight to produce sugar and oxygen. The reactants in photosynthesis, which are what is used, are CO2, water, and sunlight. The plant gets water from the ground through its roots. The plant collects carbon dioxide from the air. Much of the carbon dioxide comes from living organisms that exhale or breathe it out, but some also comes from factory smokestacks and car fumes. Right, so again, we're going to use this passage to answer these questions. What is the formula for photosynthesis? So you should have gotten that from the passage. We're told that the reactant, so what goes into that equation, is carbon dioxide, water, and sunlight. And what is produced, or what are our products, are glucose and oxygen. Right, the second question says, what 3 things are used to make glucose in photosynthesis? Those 3 things are going to be our reactants. I'm gonna write this in a different color than yellow, hold on. So those reactants are carbon dioxide, water, and sunlight. But now, where do these things come from? So the water has to come from the rain that falls from the sky. Okay, but then how does that water enter the plant? Well, it's going to enter the plant through the series of roots that the plant has. So the roots are able to absorb that water through the ground and it enters the plant. Now name 3 sources of CO2. So where does that carbon dioxide come from? Well, it comes from us, right? Living organisms exhale CO2, but it can also come from pollution, right? So factories produce CO2. Car fumes have CO2 in them. So 3 sources are living organisms exhaling it, as well as factories and car fumes. And now the last question, it's kind of cut off on my screen, but that is, what type of energy does the plant use to convert CO2 and H2O into sugar? So we've talked about energy in the form of ATP, right? But that's when we're talking about cellular respiration. So what type of energy do we have to use here? And that is the sunlight. Remember, we talked about photosynthesis means we're using light to create something. And the specific type of light that's being used in photosynthesis is sunlight. The plants have to absorb the energy from the sun in order to produce that glucose. Now, I've actually got a song for you guys. So one of my teachers taught me this song in 7th grade, and I still haven't forgot it. Many, many years later, it's still stuck in my head. So I'm here to pass it on to you so that you too can be singing it for the next 20 to 30 years of your life. So this is how it goes. Are you ready? I'm gonna sing it by myself, so this is gonna be horrible, and I'm so sorry. So the reason these lyrics are written twice is because it kind of repeats. So usually if we were in this class, I would sing the first part and you guys would repeat it and sing the second part. But since it's just me, I'm singing it alone today. So here we go. Photosynthesis, photosynthesis, plants make food, Water, sunlight, CO2. Water, sunlight, CO2 yields glucose and O2, yields glucose and O2. Wasn't that beautiful? So tomorrow in class, I am gonna make you sing that song with me. So go ahead and start practicing. I'm gonna sing the first part, you'll repeat the second part. But if you remember this song, you will never forget the formula for photosynthesis because it's right here in the song. So we're told that plants make food, right? They're making glucose using water, sunlight, CO2. Those are our reactants. Yields glucose and O2. Those are our products. So if you remember this song, you will always have that formula, which is water plus sunlight plus CO2 yields glucose and O2. It's a miracle. It's a work of art, people. So remember this song and you will never forget that formula. Now, the last thing on your notes today is a box for you to write both the name and the chemical formula for each of these molecules that we're going to be working with. So remember that whenever we're talking about carbon dioxide, the chemical name for that is CO2. Whenever we're talking about oxygen, the chemical name for that is O2. Whenever we're talking about water, the chemical name is H2O. And whenever we're talking about glucose, the chemical name is C6H12O6. And finally, whenever we're talking about ATP, we're always going to abbreviate it ATP, but you will need to recognize that those three letters actually stand for adenosine triphosphate. So please write that in your notes. And you might notice that it's called ATP because these three letters, oops, they went away, are ATP, adenosine triphosphate, ATP. And again, if you've forgotten, this is our energy. All right. Now, this is not on your notes, and we kind of talked about this today in class, but I will show you a picture of this just to jog your memory. So we talked about today how cellular respiration and photosynthesis feed into each other. So again, you need to remember that the formula for cellular respiration is glucose plus oxygen yields carbon dioxide, water, and energy. But the formula for photosynthesis is carbon dioxide plus water plus the sun yields glucose and oxygen. So you might notice that the products of photosynthesis are the same as the reactants of cellular respiration. And the products of cellular respiration are the same as the reactants of photosynthesis. So these two processes work hand in hand. They have to have each other to function because whatever comes out of cellular respiration is needed to start photosynthesis, and whatever comes out of photosynthesis is needed to start cellular respiration. So these two processes end up creating just like a loop where they both continue to happen, and by continuing to happen, they help the other process happen as well. Now, that is all I have for you today. So if you have any questions about today's lesson, please let me know on Remind, send me a message. Other than that, please complete your exit ticket and submit these notes before tomorrow morning. Have a wonderful day, and I will see you guys tomorrow.